Calandra is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to the Simply Financial podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. This is episode number 31 of season 3. On today's podcast, we're going to cover identity theft awareness and the EQUIFAX breach. I have with me as a guest Brian Thompson, the Vice President of Sales at the Thompson Agency. They're in Collinsville, Connecticut, and he runs the identity monitoring consulting practice that they have within the Thompson Agency. So, Brian, first off, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great.
Good. I think this is a great topic and also a timely topic. To begin with, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the financial services industry going on 12 years now, starting in mortgage at Wells Fargo in California. And then that was 2007. So it wasn't my fault that the whole mortgage meltdown.
Interesting time to be in the mortgage business, but go on.
Yeah, so I started then. I was in Santa Monica for about a year, and then I came back to Connecticut. I had an opportunity to start wholesale division of a mortgage company. When everyone was running from the fire, we were running into it. We got a little bit lucky in timing and went from 12 people to 300 people when I left, developing a wholesale channel at that company. And then more recently, I went over to the Thompson Agency. It's a family-run business. My grandfather started that 62 years ago now.
That's great.
Yeah. And so we basically exist to build strong relationships with agents, our partners, where we are able to serve and secure as many families' futures as possible through different products, being life insurance, disability, long-term care, annuities, and now identity theft protection.
So this is kind of your baby within the Thompson Agency. Is that
Yes.
a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I understand that we talked off podcast. That was it you were a victim of identity theft or someone in your family? This kind of strikes close to home, what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yes, absolutely. My identity was stolen about 2 years ago. Well, back that up a bit. It was stolen probably 3 or 4 years ago. Was the first Anthem breach.
I see.
And then where I found it was what happened. I received a bill in the mail from AT&T for 4 cell phones. 4 cell phones I don't own. I don't have AT&T. So I started to look into it a little bit, and I found that somebody had taken out credit at a Best Buy in Washington State in my name with my Social Security number, my address, my date of birth. They had everything. So they extended credit. AT&T was great about it. Best Buy was great about it, but it got me interested in this whole process, right? So that was really the impetus of why we got into identity theft. And throughout that process, I learned a lot, right? Just remediating.
Just from your personal experience.
Yeah, just my personal experience, because I'm from an industry in the mortgage world where I had resources. I said, hey, listen, I know these people. Let me ask them what I should be doing, because my identity was stolen. So I contacted the people that I knew, and they said, do this, this, and this. Ultimately, it took me ended up being about 35 hours that it took me to take care of everything. And then I kind of looked back and I said, what if this happened to my mom? Right?
Okay.
And if this happened to my mom, I'm not sure, first, I don't know if she would even done anything. She probably wouldn't have paid the bill. Right. She probably wouldn't have called them. She probably wouldn't have taken care of it, and it still would be happening, right? So ultimately, serendipitously, we found a great partner where we teamed up, and they kind of brought us in and taught us all about the identity theft market.
Beautiful. So you're immersed in this stuff today.
Yeah.
So in the news recently, there's been the report that EQUIFAX has had a massive breach. Can you just catch everyone up and explain what happened with EQUIFAX? First off, who is EQUIFAX?
So EQUIFAX is one of the main 3 credit reporting agencies. So there's Equifax, there's Experian, and there's TransUnion. And so what they do is they collect data, and they report that data so that institutions, lending institutions, or employers, or even the government in some cases, they hold a lot of information for the government as well. They create reports for them, and they are basically reporting somebody's stability, ability, willingness for loans,
Okay.
for reputational risk, for things of that nature. So EQUIFAX is one of those companies, and they're the oldest company, and they probably, next to the government, they probably have the most information warehoused of any institution.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
And so, yeah, it's an important. They're a very substantial player in information game. Right?
Okay, so they had a breach.
Yes, and so the breach consisted of about 143 million people. If you look
That's
at
an incredible number. Like you said that as if it's.
Well, I've been saying it about 100 times a day in the last week.
It was really an 143 million, which is what, 40% of the American population? Somewhere along that.
Yeah, I actually looked that up today because I wanted to be accurate.
Oh, good. So give us the number.
So 249 million adults in America, right? So over 18, right? So that would be 58% of the adult population were part of this breach in one shape,
okay,
one form or another.
So what was taken in this breach? Because breach sounds kind of like not a concrete term. So what does that mean? What actually was taken? Was there different information for different people taken, or was it the same information for everybody? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this overall, this breach is a little bit different than others, right? Exclusive of maybe Anthem. So if you looked at LinkedIn, Sony, or Twitter, or Yahoo, those are all breaches that were significant. Yahoo being the biggest ever, right? That was the largest breach of all time.
In terms of numbers. But it didn't involve Social Security numbers, right?
In terms of information, it was not nearly as detrimental to the individuals that were part of it. So the things that were involved, to answer your question, is Social Security numbers, date of birth, full names, addresses, driver's license numbers, and credit card numbers. So not everybody had everything stolen in that list. There's subsets within there. So part of that group are groups that have driver license and credit card numbers stolen. And that's mostly because of disputes that were happening within the credit agency.
But is it fair to say if I had, let's say, your Social Security number, your date of birth, your address, your driver's license number, I have the full litany of what you just described, I could do a lot of damage and it wouldn't be that hard if I was a bad actor. Is that fair?
Absolutely. So they've been given a gift perfectly wrapped up with all the information that they need, meaning the bad guys, right? So they have all the information to perpetrate identity theft.
So do we know who the bad guys are?
No.
Is it just...
We don't. They might.
EQUIFAX might, or the FBI might.
Yeah.
But is it, if you had to guess, is it like one guy sitting in a house in Nigeria someplace, or is this organized crime? Is this like state-sponsored activity?
All possible.
Yeah.
Probably not some guy in his basement. Could be, but we don't know. State-sponsored, I would not rule that out in any way, shape, or form.
So what do you think the impact of this breach will be in terms of how the regulators, companies, and the American public look at identity theft? And I want to get into some tips and strategies for protecting your information in a little bit. But what do you think the impact of this breach is, given the severity, the numbers, the invasiveness of the information that was gotten by the bad guys? What's going to be the impact?
So I think there's going to be there's different sides to look at that, but there's definitely going to be impact legislatively. There's going to be impact on that. There's already a bill on the floor Elizabeth Warren has brought up. She's the architect of the CFPB. So there's definitely some weight behind that motion. There's also many filed lawsuits already. And there's already a lot of discussion at the Attorney General, even in Connecticut. Attorney General Jeffson has been very vocal about what's been going on. And then, so in terms of the result or the significance, again, you said the data. The data is extremely important in this in that it's the most sensitive data that people have.
So just to catch everybody up, you mentioned Senator Warren. She's the senator from Massachusetts.
Correct.
And then the entity was the CFPB. That's what, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Yep.
And okay, so
just to elaborate on that, they have an investigation. The FTC has an investigation. The SEC has an investigation, and all the other acronyms as well.
So maybe I'm jaded, but so the investigations will not amount to anything in my mind. There'll be investigations that may even drag the CEO from Equifax in front of some committee. But at the end of the day, do you think these investigations will help, say, me as an American citizen with the protection of my identity, or is this just for show?
Ultimately, I think what will happen
is... That's a tough question.
It is a tough question because you can't predict the future. But what I can say is it'll make it less likely, or it'll make the regulation on entities such that entities like Equifax are going to have more stringent demands on them from regulators to protect your identity. Will it stop identity theft? No.
Okay. So let's separate from the Equifax issue for a moment. Sure. And what are the common ways that identities are stolen? And, well, I guess first off, I mean, what is the numbers or metrics you could give us about identity theft? Like, what is it doing to Americans? What are some of the numbers? How big of an issue is this?
Yeah, so about 7% of the population every year is affected. Equifax kind of changes that whole percentage, right? But so if you're looking at those numbers, there's a ton of data on how many people, what the costs are, what the time frame it is to remediate. And so like the average person is about $9,500 in remediation cost.
Okay.
And it takes them about 330 hours. And that's according to Javelin report in the FTC.
So it takes them, that's the number of hours it takes to kind of fix it. They may not lose any money on the deal, but it takes them that many hours just to get it fixed. Is that what you're saying?
And the average person actually does lose money on it.
Lose money.
Yeah, so $9,600 is
about
the average. Now, that's when I did it, I didn't lose any money.
Right.
I lost time in a lot of it, and my employer lost time in that I had to do most of that work at work. So what happens is you have a ton of people that are doing the remediation on their own. They're spending a lot of their own money. They're either absent from work or present at work doing other things than their work.
Okay.
So we call it presenteeism.
I can see that.
Something else.
Sure.
And so the return on investment, if in some of these cases, in some companies are adding this as an HR benefit.
Okay.
Just as an example.
So do you have any sense? Before I get, I'm so excited about this question. I keep trying to get to it before I should. So it's 7%. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that 7% number is likely to go up given the severity of what happened with Equifax. Correct. We'll have to wait and see, but it doesn't take...
It's going to happen.
Yeah. So is that the most common way that people are victims of identity theft, where there's some intrusion into a retailer or Equifax or something like that? Or is it more common where I go into a store or restaurant and somebody lifts my credit card number? Or what are the common ways that this actually happens?
Yeah, so every day people are trying to hack different companies. But every day people are stealing information right out from under your nose too, right? So the most common way is through social engineering, which means that people get you to do things or say things or give you information that they're going to manipulate for their own gain, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be the most effective and often used way, because to breach a company is not all that easy. The technology we have now, or most companies have, is pretty good in defending against